so high, but they only collect data, well, they collect data with numbers through the coroner's office, but also we have issues with regards to just collecting from the schools. So it's every 2 years through the suicide risk, the student data collection. So at this point, it's every 2 years, like 2015, 2017, 2019. We're not able to get the 19 data right now, but in talking with Richard, right now we're at 11 students who have committed suicide. We've got to get this back down, guys. It's way too high. But our dilemma that we're up against right now is how are we going to monitor our children? It's so much easier when they're in front of us. So as you can see with the challenges we have with the deaths, 19 students, 27 deaths, 19 were students in 2018. The numbers are going up. Now, why is that happening? And why are we most concerned right now is kids are home. They've lost a lot of their support systems. The challenges are much more dramatic. And part of the problem is kids know how to hide things. And sadly, you may not see some of the emotions or critical areas we need to look at, and sadly we may be missing kids, and I think that's our biggest concern. Okay, we have to be aware of what symptoms to look for, and our staffs are the frontline people. Okay, they have to look at the symptoms and figure out what to do. Okay, let's see, where are we going here now?
I got it, what to look for.
Okay, this is a critical piece, and I think, again, the frontline staff need to be interested in this, and that's where you're going to fit in as the catalyst to help people make some decisions, because I think through Zoom, they're going to see some of these things. On the other hand, we may get a parent report, but significant changes in behaviors. They either, kids who presented pretty alertly seem to be reducing that alertness. Their challenges are much more overcoming them, and you can see that type of thing. They lose interest because they've lost the ability to care for things. So that sudden change. But again, you might see, and I put it in there too, that there might be maybe not an abrupt change. It might be a slowly increasing kind of movement forward where they become much more discouraged. Okay? Okay, Nance.
Yeah, I'm trying to move it for some reason. Let's see.
Oh, thank you. That makes me feel less stupid. Feelings, okay, these are the critical things. And again, the practitioners who are here are the ones who are going to have to help you, but you can tell by the demeanor of the kid, feelings of sadness or helplessness, occupation, preoccupation with death, taking unnecessary risks, that scares us dramatically. And I can't see the other one, but the point is, I really
out of character behavior.
Out of character behavior, the atypical. Going back to the unnecessary risk, seriously think about this, guys. We have had kindergartners and young ones commit as well as attempt suicide. Now, how can that be? Well, they become very too carefree in their behavior, and it's almost intentional. We've had kids jump in front of cars, ride their bikes, and become very careless because they almost don't care, or they're begging for support. So again, you have to think, I've always suggested this, think crazy. If I were that kid in that situation, what would I be thinking to do? Why is this kid doing this behavior? Okay? Okay, Nance.
I turned it. What to look for.
The older ones will have these kinds of things. And for those of you attending tomorrow, they'll talk about suicide. You'll see themes in their writing. You'll see drawings. I have a really potent drawing for tomorrow's training where the kids actually are pretty clearly saying, I'm thinking about this. And sometimes it's a way to expand their feelings on paper, which is exactly what we need to know. But it shows the depth and despair that some of our kids are feeling to have this dramatic, intense feeling. So sadness, discouragement, hopelessness, that's where we really do need to kick in. And I know you're going to say, holy smokes, how do I find this? The issue is you'll see a difference in the kid. A kid who has been engaged with you starts to disengage, starts to distance themselves from you. They start to feel a sense of burdensomeness. And I was thinking about this yesterday. When we were developing this and when we had those really high numbers back in the 2000s, we found two categories in the area of Nevada, in the area of Clark County. There was one section of children who had more middle class, upper middle class supports financially. Those kids oftentimes felt a sense of desperation because they felt they couldn't meet the challenges that were presented to them and felt like they were failing as children to their parents in school. There was another element where the kids whose families had financial challenges that were in survival mode, their parents were too, not intentionally, but unintentionally disengaged because they're trying to survive themselves. So we have two ends of the continuum of the type of kid who tends to fall into these areas within our area, within Clark County. Now, again, one thing to keep in mind is there is no criteria, there is no pattern, and they keep reinforcing that point. But again, we did see those patterns with the numbers, that it's either the low struggling economic and the higher middle where kids are being challenged to produce and they feel like they can't. So what do we look for? Unnecessary risk, going back to the last one, Nance. Unnecessary risk, loss of interest on things they really cared about, disengages, sense of being a burden to others. That was the real issue. And if you noticed, I highlighted some of those: burden and disengagement. If they feel like they're becoming a problem, and kids love their parents, I mean, for the most part, there might be challenges, but when they start to see that what they present to their families is beyond what their families can manage, then they start to panic. And that's when we start seeing some of the behaviors that are very worrisome. Okay, Nance. Okay, guys, this is what we want to teach our staffs, okay, when you present this. Never leave the kid unattended, okay? I'm going to tell you, this is a sidebar. I thought, oh boy, I know my stuff. This isn't going to happen after all the years of doing this. And I was at one of our local high schools, and we called, this kiddo was seriously suicidal. I was extremely worried. We actually had the school police there at that moment with this particular situation. The mother came in, I turned around, she grabbed the kid and flew out of the school. We used our local resources, meaning the school police. That kid was no longer to be found. We called the Metro. They went underground, the parents did. Finally, the kid resurfaced. Well, you know the sense of panic we all felt because mother was contributing to his hiding. You know, she took him out of there as fast as she could. And the burden was terrible. But again, we had to call Metro. So please never leave the kid unattended. I just turned. I was right there, turned, and they flew. So, and we don't, unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of a school police here. So we have to use Metro and the staff that, you know, our deans and supports and APs. There is a point, though, if you run after the kids, they might run into the street. I mean, we've got so many presenting issues, so always keep the kid with you. And that's what our teachers need to know. I know in the Zoom situation, this is going to be more challenging. And that's why, truthfully, I worry very much that if the kid's offline and not with you, where is he? What is or she? What are they doing? If you sense there is a problem or the suggestion of a problem, please support the fact to your teams, your teachers, that take it seriously. I'd rather overreact and back up and say, oh, thank you. Okay, it worked. You have to take immediate action when you're concerned. Don't let it go because you want to go to sleep at night. That's one thing I've always told people. They always say, am I doing the right thing? My point is, did you do enough that you feel like you could sleep tonight? The admins are responsible for every kid in that school, whether this is home teaching, distance learning, whatever it is, or once the kids return. So that admin, whoever is designated, needs to know what's happening, because they will then trigger doing a suicide risk assessment. The teachers and your support staff do not have to feel like they're going to be stuck with doing this. Where their issue is reporting, and also making sure that the kid is being cared for. There is some kind of attention to it. Again, the challenge will be is if it's home teaching, distance learning, that's going to be a challenge for us. Okay, Nancy.
Yes, there it goes.
Thank you. I really appreciate you doing this. Okay, what will be done? What's that?
Just call me Vanna.
Okay, Vanna. Wish we made their money. What happens? Every school has a designated suicide risk assessment team, and those guys tomorrow are going to go through training, many of whom have done it again, but we have to now, with the new laws, reinsure that they are up to date and haven't forgotten anything. Truthfully, because we don't do this very often. But typically, it's the school's social worker, psych, nurse, school counselor, SSP, who are the primary people who will get engaged with doing a suicide protocol. We strongly suggest 2 people do it, because I have to share with you, it's pretty unnerving to do the assessment. One person can listen, the other can scribe. Another person might hear something the other person doesn't catch, and we will, interview more deeply. So typically it's a 2-person situation. If we need to, and typically if it will happen, not only the student, but the parent is interviewed, so that way we can get a flavor for the full family dynamics. From that point, then decisions are made on what needs to be done, and then we find the right resources for the kid. So that's the global overview on what should happen. Okay. All right. If things get more dicey, this is where the team will be doing more investigatory kinds of things. But these are the things that I think your staff need to know. This is how we make decisions. We're looking for a very detailed plan. The more detail that shares with us that the kid's truly thinking about it. And we have what's called a pathway to violence, which shows the kid from starting to feel disturbed all the way up to making decisions to harm themselves. So there is kind of a systematic approach in how the ideation moves forward. We look at history, we look at risk factors, warning signs, things that tell us that, okay, this kid's got some red flags. On the other side of that scale of justice, and that's how we'll be teaching it tomorrow, is there are positive things, and we have to weigh out the negatives with the positives. The negatives are the above, the warning signs, the current stressors, the perceived sense that life sucks, I can't manage it anymore. The other issue we have to look at, though, that can be very positive. Do they feel like they belong to a group? Do they feel like they belong to their family? Are there protective factors in place for this kid? Even though the kid may not be aware of it, are there supports there for the kid? That helps us weigh out on the scale of justice what to do. Another piece is, does the kid have stressors that immediately have happened? For example, this is a critical time for these kids. Being home in situations, trying to manage. Every kid, I can almost predict it. They've had unusual instruction since March, mid-March. They've been then, trying to do distance learning, which has been a challenge. They're home. If their home environment is unstable, financially, people have had struggles. If their families have lost their income source, or families have lost people, they're in a kind of mode where losses occur because of illnesses. Those are stressors, and I think that exacerbates this issue, and we've got to be quite very aware of that. When we do the assessment, we're observing constantly. We watch for the demeanor, make sure that there's no, if there's lying, what is it? Let's dig into it and figure out the issue. So this is the combination 1 to 6 that if an assessment is done, it's very comprehensive because we don't want to make a mistake. We don't want to miss a kid. And we'd rather be more safe, go on the safety end rather than error. So we're erring on the side of caution. Okie doke, Nance. Okay, some of our kids, and I want your staffs to know that some of our kids, we don't even know it, are under supports within the community. That's a question your teams are going to have to determine. And that, you know, I don't know. In some instances, your teachers may know that. On some instances, when the suicide team gets together, they may have to investigate with the parent. If the kid's in treatment, what we do is call the provider and find out. We've got a kid who is at this point looking pretty critical. What do you want us to do? Okay, that way that person who's had more involvement with the emotional and social issues can give us their direction. Most instances, they will say, bring them in today ASAP, or they'll say, go to the hospital. That's what we're finding, but it's hard to say. If there's no provider, then we as a team have to figure out what is the parent insured or not? Where do they live? How can we get them the support that they need? So an intervention is done, okay? Okay, Nance. Okay, legal issues. We're all worried about that. Are we going to get sued? I'll tell you what, side on the error of caution, meaning if you suspect something, do something. The last thing we want you to do is not sleep at night or feel like you didn't disclose something and then the next morning we find out that the kid has hurt themselves. The issue is, okay, can I do that? There's a Tarasoff ruling that impacts educators. And what this in essence says is if we see that there's a need that a child or someone else is in danger, we have to act on it. We have to report the information and act on it. So it behooves all the teachers, the support staff, that if you see something, like they say, see something, say something, do it. Take care of business so that way you can sleep that night. And then those guys who've been trained more deeply into how to do the suicide protocol, they can provide the action, because that's the issue, you know, in court cases. And that's what I don't want you to live by, the court cases. I want you to live by what's good for children. But what they will look at is, did we act in due diligence? Did we do it quickly and efficiently? Again, if there's a health and safety issue, you've got to report it to somebody. Okay. All right. Process. If this all occurs, okay, if we see a kid, it could be a medical emergency. For example, guys, if your teachers or you find out through Zoom the kid has ingested something or doesn't appear to be cogent, something's off, we've got to do something. And if the kid is in school, typically we pull the nurse in and get a medical transport. But again, that will come down to having the kid with us. But again, your staff who have this distance learning, that's going to be much more of a challenge. But we know our kids enough to see that if you start to see a pattern, or you see incoherent kinds of behaviors, or the kid can't keep their eyes open, those kinds of things where you'd say, this is a red flag, we've got to deal with that. The other element, if it's not a medical emergency, but it's a social emotional emergency, what our staff have been trained to do is what's called a screener. What we try to do is ask the basic questions on whether or not this kid might be at risk or is thinking about it. If there's any element there that would suggest there's more here, a more comprehensive assessment is done, which incorporates the parent as well as the kid, and maybe significant teachers who may have seen some issues. Now, significant teachers, possibly the school counselor, SSP, whatever that is, to be a much more in-depth situation. Again, because of COVID, we are compromised here because we don't have access to everybody. But again, if we have our hands on the kid, and I'll tell you how we're going to do that. If we have our hands on the kid, then we can find out, are there core people that they confided and talked to that we can check out and make sure the kid is doing okay. Okay, Nance. Okay, what's your duty? What's other people's duties? Number one, keep calm. Please keep calm. I'll tell you what, every case we do, your blood pressure goes up and your anxiety level goes up. And that is just the issue, because you're thinking, I can't lose this kid. I can't have the kid run. What's a parent going to say? What if I'm wrong? All those things. All right, we're trying to get in place for you so we can manage that. All right. But we've got to verify the facts. We've got to make sure that this is correct. We've had a couple of instances where students have reported to staff that, oh, I think so-and-so is suicidal. We have a duty to investigate that. But it turns out to be negative. The kid was misinterpreted. It is not an accurate thing. We can drop that, but we'll keep an eye on that kid. But if the facts show that we've got a kid who's problematic, then that triggers the whole process. A thing that the suicide risk team will look at is there some event, some situation that will say the child had an event or something recent that happened. I have to share with you things like that are critical events in our younger kids' life. Say a family member's ill or sick. We've got that with COVID. If a family member has left the house due to, disengagement, whatever, we've got so many families in financial crisis. That could be a trigger. In the older kids, disengagement from girlfriend, boyfriend, those kinds of things. These kids are not connected as well as they used to be in school, so we might have that as an issue. So we have to look at those kinds of things to determine, is this a kind of transient or temporary situation, or is it enough transient, but enough to push that kid from not being like on the cusp to being much more problematic. We've got to look at that. So we find out from the kid, then we have to verify from the kid themselves. Tell me what you're thinking, what's going on, let's talk about it. And that's where the suicide preliminary protocol helps us to just dig into the facts so we can figure out what do we have here and work forward. Okay, doke, Nance. Okay, what our staff will do who have been trained, never make a deal. I can tell you, I'll never forget that one school where that parent ran on me and pulled her kid. Never make deals with kids because people get scared. They don't know what's going to happen. Parents are afraid they're going to lose their kid. Kids get scared because they think they might go to jail, whatever the issue. Don't make any deals. So if they said, I'll tell you, but don't you tell my parents, you can't do that. We have to, and the kids need to know that. And even if the kids then don't disclose anything, if you have enough information, we have a duty to go further and find out what's going on. Okay, because kids get scared. I would be too. Kids need to know there's confidentiality, meaning there are limits to that. That when a kid's life, that's that Tarasoff stuff. If there's duty to protect, duty to warn, we got to work together. But what I've done throughout the years is tell kids, we'll do it together, kiddo. You're with me. Tell me what you can say, what you can't say, or if you want to talk the whole thing, you can do that, and then I will support you and we'll work it together, or I will talk for you. So this is one of those, the kid doesn't make the decision. You have to just say to them, we're doing it together and you take charge. And sadly too, that's what's going to happen with the parent. Ultimately, the team will move it forward because we can't take a chance in losing a kid. Okay. So there's suicide screeners done first. If we need more, we will do the comprehensive. I probably say when we get to this point, we're at probably 80% of them end up doing the comprehensive eval. Okay, these are the hard questions. Have you been thinking about it? Do you have a plan? What's the plan? When will it happen? Now, this is what we're looking for here is details. The more details, the more thought, the more workable that plan is, then I get more scared. We all get more scared. So that's the issue we have to deal with. Everybody at one point or time may be thinking, oh crap, I wish I could go to sleep and when I wake up, it's all gone. that's how little kids think, truthfully. And that's a worry for little ones. But every kid has challenges, boyfriend and girlfriend breakup, home, all the issues that are actually going on that are problematic. We've just got to deal with those and talk through, how serious is it? And are you thinking of killing yourself? If the plan and the details are so imminent and there's multiple details, it's a workable plan. They've thought through things, like, I know where there's a gun in my house. I can get the code to get in. I'm going to be using that. Today's my day. That's when you panic. That's when we need help immediately. I have to share with you too. This was another nightmare. I'm giving you all my nightmares, but after so many years, you get them. One of the high school kids had a plan, but his intent was not to commit suicide. His plan was to let his mother know how desperate he was. He had planned the plan, he had planned his situation that he would time it in a way that he would hang himself, but in enough time, because he knew his mother's schedule. Well, guess what? She wasn't on schedule that day coming home from work, and he completed. And we knew all the information once the police got involved and they looked at the documents. So again, we have to think through the risk factors, what the presenting issues are, and figure out, does this plan, is it workable? And think of Murphy's Law. That's everybody's, kind of guideline. If Murphy's Law were to be injected here, what's the worst case that could happen here? We've got to deal with it. Okay, Nance. After that assessment is all done, which you can see is pretty comprehensive, we determine the level of risk, figure out the insurances. If there are no insurances, DCFS, which is the state of Nevada, it used to be Children's Behavioral Services, they can provide services. There's a district, not a district, it's the community site-based team for all of Clark County. They can be provided and offer services for 30 days, and then from there figure out what's next. Last resort, if we can get no supports, there's a possibility of imminent danger, the kid can be transported to the hospital and an eval will be done there. And the hard part of it is, here we are as professionals, we're saying, what the hell, I already did the assessment. You tell them that you did the assessment. I have information here. They have to follow their normal protocol because they're all have systems in place in certain kinds of areas that they have to follow their requirements. Here, your information will be gladly accepted. There isn't one, there hasn't been one emergency room that I've contacted that has been problematic with regards to providing information. So again, the point is here, let your team know, your school team, there's a possibility if it's imminent, the kid will end up going to the hospital or possibly getting support, but we'll make sure that it's done. Okay, Nance. Okay, this is the continuum, and I want teachers to know that. This isn't a death sentence, meaning that the kid's going to end up in a psychiatric hospital. The issues will be apprised of what the levels of support that are necessary are there. And oftentimes we're part of that communication. The kid could return home. The kid could be hospitalized for a brief period of time. And eventually the kid will come to school. That's where we fit in. We would hope that we would get some information from the parents with regards to what were the conclusions, what were the diagnoses, is medication going to be an issue? So what does that mean for us? We've got to set up a plan, a safety plan, whereby we can make sure the kid is put together. I had an email from somebody, very interestingly, I've never had this happen in all the years we've been doing this. The parent refused to release any information, refused to have any involvement with the school team. In that situation, then we have no parent support, but we have a kid at risk. So I suggested to the school team, and again, that's where we have to be a team and encourage that then if the kid presents differently, that we all have to watch this kid and someone has to be responsible to alert admin and the suicide risk team to investigate, because that kid's at risk, and have a safety plan ready to go, even though the parent is insisting on non-involvement, because we have a duty to protect. Okay, these are issues I want you to think about, guys. Are you culpable? If you don't, if take an action, don't just sit there and go home and then worry about it. Take an action. Let your admin know. Okay? Just let your, if you take action, no one's going to fault you on it. I keep track of all the court cases, and for the most part, I only just saw one recently that was a little odd, but for the most part, 100% of the time, if the schools acted, if you act, if your teachers act and alert admin, then you've taken action. You will not be culpable. And again, I want you to sleep well at night. I would not want to go to bed thinking, oh crap, what's this kid doing tonight? Will parents be upset? You bet your life they will. But there's also a sense of relief, because I think in their hearts they know something is wrong. So yes, this is very disturbing, very difficult for parents. I know I would have been fit to be tied, but then you calm down and we work with the parents. Again, this is the kind of situation your staff need to step up and let them know. You're empowering them to step up and go to your admin or the person in charge and take action. So again, yes, it's very difficult, undoubtedly. Will parents be mad? Yep, more than likely they could be, but the anger is diffuse, meaning they're just mad at the world. Why is my kid doing this? I was trying to be a good parent. What do I need to do here? I can't do it. I don't have the money, blah, blah, blah. There's all kinds of things. But again, it's the same kind of approach you take with a kid who's panicking. We're here to support you. We're going to be involved with everything you do. We'll be here. So these are things you need to talk through with your staff. They are not ultimately responsible, but your admin and you as a crisis team will be. What if the student runs? I already told you about my story. That is not feeling good. Trust me. You got to call the police. Because we have to use our local jurisdictions, you got to let police know you got a runner. If you can find them, try to find them on campus. That becomes very, very, that's panicky. I'll tell you, it's panicky because once they leave, it's difficult. What if the parent does not show up? Okay, then you got to run to your agency supports. That's why they're there. If the parent is either tired, can't be bothered, the kid knows it already. Truthfully, that's why they're in the sense of panic that they are. Then you have to call your local police jurisdiction, North Las Vegas Metro, Henderson, whatever. Child Protective Services is also another issue. Actually, I've done dual, truthfully, so that way CPS knows. But there is communication between both agencies anyhow. But again, that will behoove the admin at the school, the practitioner, the teacher, the whomever aide wouldn't have to follow that. We would be doing that as a team. Okay, what else? All right, next day, you think, okay, you go to bed and you say, whoa, thank God we handled that one. Well, if the kid returns next day, you got to pull in the kid and say, what happened, kiddo? Because potentially they did get an eval, got something going with a clinician, and the kid was sent home. Then we've got to call the parent and ask them, what happened? If you sense that you're getting jive, they're tap dancing because, oh, he was just fooling around, then we've got to decide what's next, because the parent is not going to work with us. So again, that becomes more administrative and suicide response team. That's not an element a teacher needs to deal with. But if we find out those are the issues, or say you're in Zoom and doing distance learning and the kid's back there the next day looking like crap, you know something's happening. You've got to find out what happened, and we need to verify it, and then we'll take the next actions. Okay, Nance. Okay, what does your staff do? Watch your kiddos. And I know that you do that. This is so much harder with Zoom right now, but you got to watch them. If you see changes in writings and changing in their demeanor, all that kind of stuff, then your staff member needs to be encouraged, needs to almost feel like it's a directive. That they contact either your admin, your school counselor, your SSP, your psych, whoever is a good contact. We've got to carry it the next step, because the last thing you want to have on your brain is the fact that we had a red flag kid and we didn't carry it the next step. So our teachers need to know that we're here. And I put in the bottom, I can't really, it's covered because of the picture here, but it's better to be safe than sorry so you can sleep at night. We don't want to lose a kid. Does that make sense? Okie dokie. I think there we go, Nance. I put this screen in because this is a new piece here that we're all dealing with. Distance learning is really, oh, look how cute. Distance learning is really becoming a terrible challenge for all of us. So it behooves the teacher to keep an eye on our children. If you see abrupt or possibly slow moving changes in demeanor, behavior, performance, just everything, the physical appearance, everything. If you see differences, start monitoring. If you suspect something is up, let your admin know and they can contact the suicide team that they've identified at your school site. So that way somebody can act for this kid. But you're going to be our front line in this COVID challenge because oftentimes we don't have it. I mean, possibly parents will call us if they see something, but oftentimes they may not because they're embarrassed, they're questioning themselves and may not be able to meet that challenge. Does that make sense? Okay, Nance. Okay. This was a very quick presentation. It's actually a summary. We're going to make sure your identified suicide risk team tomorrow is going to have all the particulars. We want to know if there are questions that you have, challenges that we have not addressed for you that you foresee happening, issues, any kind of concerns we need to know so we can address them for you. We're always available day and night. We don't want to lose a kid. So please, please, please let us know if you have questions. Have we missed a point that you're thinking, oh crap, what happens? What do we do with this? I got to be honest with you, every day it's something new, but on the other hand, there are patterns of issues and we want to be here for you. You're not alone. We'll always be here to help you, no matter, like I said, if it's day or night. I have had the pleasure